I know. I'm messaging that we're live.
Oh, I guess I should do that. I still had about 10 kids not turning in any work.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to have to make some phone calls on Monday. Ooh, we already got 4 people. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. 5 people. Fantastic.
Have you started?
Yep. We are live. So I'll wait a couple minutes and then I'm going to get started. Basically long enough for me to put up my Etsy quiz. All right, that's posted. All right, let's get back to this YouTube. Ooh, 37 people and 6 likes. Man, I'm popular. Miss Green, you know what I'm wondering? So each week, YouTube takes a picture of me, right? And each week, my beard has gotten progressively longer because I'm doing a quarantine beard. I wonder how homeless I'm going to look in August. These are the things I think about.
Lots of time to think.
Lots of time. Lots of time to think. Hello, 57 people now. The YouTube timer says that we've been here for almost 4 minutes. At 5 minutes, I'm just going to get started. I realize I'm shaking the screen. That must be really annoying. That's terrible. And I love just sitting here in silence on a live YouTube video. Is there anything you want to talk about, Ms. Green? Any updates that we could start before we get into content?
We could, we might as well just start going over the updates about the AP exam.
What were those updates?
Yeah, like that seminar.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so thank you. they basically went into more detail of what's expected of you guys on the AP exam, considering the written portion. The idea is that the FRQs aren't going to be 7 parts. Obviously, knew that was going to happen just because of the restricted time. But it's also not going to be 7 parts because it would be too easy. Because a lot of the like A, B, and C on a 7-part question is asking things like identify or define those words. And they said explicitly they are not giving credit for definitions. Now, that means something a little different than the definition questions, but most likely we're not going to see a question on an FRQ that simply asks you to define a vocab word or to identify some simple concept, because that's something you can look up in your notebooks or look up online quickly. It seems to be the way that they're addressing cheating is by making it to where you can't. Like, I mean, you can. Like, you're more than welcome to open up your notebook or open up a computer tab, but the amount of time it's going to take you to research that is going to stop you from answering the question. So they're not saying, don't cheat, because obviously kids will. They're just structuring the test to where you can't. So real simple questions like defining and identifying just aren't going to be on the exam. So it's going to be maybe a 3-4 part FRQ, and it's going to be very conceptual and very focused on analyzing and making connections throughout the course instead of simple just memorization stuff. That's why it's really important, and I've brought this up in every PowerPoint video. Make sure you understand where everything is connected to and how you can make connections beyond the questions. And this week with the FRQ on Canada and bilingualism, it definitely dipped its toes into some Chapter 8 stuff when we talk about centripetal and centrifugal forces. So while it's an FRQ about language, you're also bouncing into Chapter 8 about, nation states or multi-ethnic states, centripetal and centrifugal forces. It goes into a little bit of Chapter 4 with pop and folk culture. I mean, you have to realize that these FRQs are going to be multi-faceted in different units and stuff like that. Were there any other updates on the screen?
Yeah, the other thing that we wanted to address is that you should have received an email from College Board that asks you to verify that you know when the exam is. You simply just need to click through that and state that you know when the exam is. You're already signed up for the exam. You've already submitted that paperwork. Remember that for some states, students pay for their AP exam, which is why College Board is giving them the option to opt out this year and get their money back. For you guys, since the county is paying for it, the expectation is that you take the exam or you owe the amount of money that you just forfeited, or the county just forfeited because you didn't take the exam. So when you're filling out that email, just make sure that you say you are taking the exam, because it's not an option in our county. Yeah,
definitely. 100%. You need to fill that. You don't need to fill it out because you can't cancel. You can't say you're not going to take the test because the county has already done it for every single one of you. So the email doesn't really apply to you. I read somewhere that they're really just trying to get a head count too, because even if you say you're not going to be at the AP exam, well, then they follow up with, well, you need to go through the proper channels to cancel. So don't freak out. Click through it, say you'll be there, whatever. If you don't get it, don't freak out. You'll be okay. As we get closer to the exam date, I will check with the testing coordinator to make sure everyone's set to go, because I'm sure the testing coordinator is going to reach out to us. I mean, it's their job to make sure that you can take the test. So those are the updates for the AP exam. We got 78 people here. Let's just go through it.
Yep.
All right. So first, we're going to look at the multiple choice. Bring that up on my screen. I'm going to run through the multiple choice real quick. Like I said last week, if you have any questions, shoot us a text on Remind, and we will answer those questions when we have gone through it. Okay, so looking at question 1, in contrast to folk culture, pop culture is more likely to vary from time to time at a given place. The answer here is B. This is because, remember, culture is unique to a specific area, and it requires relocation diffusion for it to be carried somewhere else, whereas pop culture spreads everywhere through contagious and hierarchical diffusion, and it's all very uniform. So all throughout the world, pop culture is going to be the same, but pop culture changes from time to time. Pop culture was different in the 70s versus the 80s versus the 90s versus now, whereas folk culture has always stayed the same. It's just never left the places that it's been in. Then we get to question 2. When we analyze the patterns of pop culture in our surroundings, we can surmise that the answer here is C. Nodes of innovation are central to the process of hierarchical diffusion, as that's just a straight characteristic question about pop culture. How does it start? How does it spread? You need to know the basic characteristics behind pop and folk culture and trying to apply that to as many examples as possible. Then 3, the diffusion of genes is a good example primarily of the A diffusion of pop culture. Real easy there. Don't think I need to go over that. 4, a restriction on behavior imposed by a social custom is a taboo. The answer is D for 4. 5, the trend of globalization has threatened. The answer is D for 5, folk culture more than pop culture. Obviously, guys, when we talk about pop culture imperialism, we talk about pop culture around the world. What are people going to do in response to pop culture? They're probably going to assimilate to it and drop that folk culture. But it also goes a little bit into the whole language thing. What would you rather practice? What would you rather be a part of? Something that billions of people are doing, or a couple million or a couple thousand, right? So humans will naturally gravitate towards the more popular thing. All right, moving on to 6, a lingua franca. That the answer here is B, simple definition. Just remember it's a language understood by people who have different native languages. And generally, the best definition to add to this is adding the and used for business purposes. But remember, you have to have both parts of the definition there for it to be correct. All right, then 7, the 4 most frequently spoken branches of the Indo-European family tree include all but, that would be Celtic. The rest of those are branches. Celtic is a group. So that would be a pretty confusing way. Is it Celtic? Is Indo-Iranian part of the Indo-European branch? Is that a branch, Indo-Iranian? Yeah, I guess it has to be.
I think so.
All right. 8, the second largest language family in the world is the Sino-Tibetan one, and we know that's because of Mandarin Chinese, the most spoken language in the world. 9, British and American English differ in all but which of the following? That'd be alphabet. Look, this is breaking down that language breakdown using that tree, talking about families first, then branches, then groups, then dialects. You know what I mean? And we break those down. Also very important to understand how that tree works, that tree metaphor. Because when we talk about similar languages, you want to be able to understand that where they come from, why maybe they have similar words, their histories. You don't have to know all the specifics to it, but understand just how that works with the metaphor of the tree. And then when we talk about groups, yes, you have the individual group, the individual language, but then you have tons of different dialects. And those dialects are made up of different pronunciation, different spelling, and different vocabulary. All right, moving on to question 10, a language that was nearly extinct in British-controlled areas, but which is now being revived is Celtic. And the answer comes up twice, so 10 is B. 11, a large number of individual languages documented in Africa has resulted primarily from what? And that would be from thousands of years of isolation between cultural groups. Now, we can also look at this question and look at chapter 8 a little bit when we talk about political geography and drawing those political boundaries when Europe went in and imperialized and colonized much of Africa or all of Africa. And for the longest time, they had all these different languages and stuff like that, and they were isolated from each other. But now they're being forced together through these arbitrary lines drawn by Europeans, and we know that caused a lot of conflict. So linking the idea, like you have to understand that there's all these languages, but that it would later affect them and growth of a country and stuff like that. But we'll talk more about that next week. All right, Hebrew is an example of a revived language. That's question 12. Question 13, all of the following describe the English language except what? That it's an isogloss. Guys, an isogloss is a different word for the same exact thing. It's like icebox and refrigerator, but an isogloss is more than just that. It's also the idea that you can tell when you're in a different vernacular region or perceptual region based on an isogloss, right? You know that you have traveled somewhere new because you're starting to hear different words. Isoglosses are also, I guess you could say, part of dialects. It helps us indicate when we're hearing a new dialect, and thus we could be in a new region. All right, 14, when geographers study the sites where religions originated, as well as the processes by which those religions diffuse to other locations, they're focusing on the spatial connections in a religion. That would be A. Those are those spatial patterns that we talked about back with 1. All right, 15, the maps in this chapter indicate that Eastern Orthodoxy is a branch of Christianity prevalent in Russia. Guys, know where your religions are practiced. I know no one likes the religion chapter. It's a lot of stuff thrown at you to memorize, but it helps to know regionally where these religions are. And especially, really got to reiterate this point. Are we going to see a religion FRQ? Probably not. They're not going to ask a whole question about religion, especially with how much content there is available. But since they have limited the content that you can be tested on, it is more likely that we will see more religion questions, or at least parts of FRQs will somehow be connected to a religion. So please do not glance over the religion chapter and ignore it because we didn't spend a lot of time on it. All right, 16, which is not an ethnic Asian religion, that would be Buddhism. Now, personally, I think, I don't like this question, but I get it. AP Human says that Taoism or Shintoism is ethnic, but Confucianism and Taoism, come on, anybody can practice those. But anyway, whatever. All right, 17, Hindu's caste system is A, assigns everyone to a distinct class, just a pretty straightforward thing about Hinduism. 18, Judaism is classified as an ethnic religion rather than a universalizing religion because C, its rituals derive from the agricultural cycle in Israel. Yeah, they follow an agricultural calendar, but they're ethnic because you have to be born into it. Why is that not the answer? Why is that not on there? Why are they making this complicated? I don't get it. You know, how many people know that they follow agricultural calendars? I mean, it's in the book, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just upset about it. Anyway. All right, 19, which is the most dramatic change in the geographic distribution of African Americans in the United States? That'd be the relocation to northern cities. That's after sharecropping. That's why we get the current ethnic breakdown of African Americans today. What is apartheid? The answer here is D, geographic separation of races in South Africa. Ms. Green, I saw, did you have it highlighted for B2, South Africa's government system?
Yeah, it's just a mistake.
Okay.
I made a mistake.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So yeah, that's just the geographic separation of races in South Africa. 20 is D. And like I said, if you're confused on any of these or need these, I'm going to post these later. I'm going to post the review packet answers, so don't freak out. But if you do have any questions, shoot us one over mine. 21, a nationality is a group of people tied to a place through legal status and tradition. Remember, nationality and ethnicity can be from the same place, but nationality is your legal allegiance. We'll talk more about this next week. Which of the following is likely, we're looking at 22, which of the following is likely the least or weakest centripetal force in the United States? And that would be C, internet content available around the world. I would argue that that's probably a centrifugal force forcing us apart, because once we start reading stuff from other countries, especially viewing ours, that's definitely going to make us not so happy with each other. 23, the most important centripetal force in Yugoslavia before the breakup would be its common economic interest. We're going to talk a lot about Yugoslavia next week and devolution and balkanization because, I mean, critical concepts to understand for the AP exam. 24, one distinctive feature of the Indo-European family is D. It's spoken by nearly half the world's population. And guys, you got to understand why it's spoken by everyone around the world. And that's because of pop culture imperialism. That's like today's reason why so many people speak the Indo-European languages, especially English. Look at our music, our movies, television. Everything from media is spread all throughout the world. That's why you hear English American music when you travel to other countries, is because people are listening to it. But you also have to know the historical reason why everyone speaks Indo-European languages. And that's because of colonialism and imperialism, like the good old colonialism and imperialism, not the one today through, media or through economic factors. We're talking straight up them going to these places and forcing these people to speak these languages or they die. So understand the historic reason, understand the modern day reason for Indo-European spread. All right, 25, some countries have several official languages because they want to give recognition to different groups within the country. This would be E. Look, we're going to go in depth when we talk about these FRQs, the positives and negatives of this, but it is critical that you understand why countries would do something like this when it comes to languages. And understanding this is really important to understand chapter 8 when we talk more about these centrifugal and centripetal forces. All right, 26, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are alike in that they all have their heritage contributed to Abraham. Yeah, they all come from that guy. That's why they're all called Abrahamic religions. And then 27, the English language belongs to which of the following branches of the Indo-European language family? And that would be Germanic. Okay, so don't think I have any questions on Remind. This is pretty straightforward. Okay, 1. Why is number 5D? Oh, so the question the student said, I thought globalization doesn't threaten pop culture at all. Yeah, that's what it's saying. It's saying globalization has threatened folk culture more than pop culture because pop culture is never threatened. So make sure that you understand that, guys, that globalization helps popular culture and it hurts folk culture. They just worded it in a strange way to include pop culture, so your brain just instantly turns off that answer. All right, let's see if we have any other questions from Remind. Ms. Green, do you have any?
Nope, we're good.
We are good. Okay. Moving on to our FRQs. This video must be so much fun to watch. It's just me staring at my screen and talking about AP Human. Great. What a day. Okay, so rubrics will be available on Edsby to help you, but we're looking at the AP exam question, I think from 2 years ago, pop culture terms. They gave you a little stimulus here, which shows the decade, the term, and the meaning, because apparently you guys don't know the meaning of cool or groovy or rad or selfie, apparently. Isn't that fun? I love this question. All right, so A says identify 2 specific means by which new expressions in popular culture are diffused globally. And then for part B, it's asking, explain how these terms have spread through relocation diffusion, contagious diffusion, hierarchical diffusion. And then C asks for what barriers can stop the diffusion of words. So let's talk about A real quick. You had to be specific on this one. You couldn't just say media or technology. This is a very easy question. You had to be a little more specific. But guys, you have a huge list of possible answers here. I mean, internet, email, social media, and you could say Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Vine, whatever. Celebrities, television, radio, movies, computers, phones, newspapers, streaming services, YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, music, plays, books, comic books. Literally, if you just mentioned something specific to pop culture, you're good. You just can't say vague things. Now on to B. And this is a perfect example of what we might see on the AP exam. They are asking for you to explain a process using a vocab word. And in this rubric, the very first thing it says, definitions are not acceptable. You're not defining relocation diffusion. You're not defining contagious diffusion or hierarchical. You are applying these. So even if you write a definition, that's great, but you're not going to get points for it. What they're looking for, like when they talk about relocation diffusion, they want you to explain that when a person moves, maybe they're using that term where they were originally, and when they move to the new place, they're still using that term, and then other people are going to start using that term, right? Or contagious diffusion, when one person uses one of these terms, and then everyone around them starts using that term. You've now explained how contagious diffusion spreads one of these words. Does it sound similar to the definition? Yes, but you are using it in this situation. You are applying this idea. All right, and then finally, hierarchical. You could say that maybe celebrities or people in positions of power start using a word, and then all the people that pay attention to them will start using that word. So it's a little different than contagious because it's only the people that follow that person. Or you could talk about reverse hierarchical diffusion when you have a minority or a minority group that starts to use a term, and then eventually everyone else starts to use that term because they find it cool. All right, and then moving on to what are some barriers to diffusion? Now here, obviously, go for the low-hanging fruit. You should have just talked about age barriers. That's the number one. I mean, think about it. Old people don't use the same words as you because they don't get it. I'm old. I don't use the same words as you. I don't understand why you guys say no cap. That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. So obviously there's that age barrier that already exists, right? Obviously there's distance and physical barriers. You could talk about just distance of people being apart from each other. You know, some things are said in one place that just aren't said in others, but we know that's not true because of the internet and stuff like that. But you could talk about the internet or economic barriers as a way for words to not spread either, because people just don't maybe have access to the social media or to the internet or for whatever economic purpose. You could talk about linguistic barriers. The fact is they might not speak the same language as you, so it just doesn't make sense. There's folk culture, there's ethnic barriers, there's social class barriers. I really don't see you guys going for those. I really see the easy, straightforward answers here, talking about distance, age, money, or access to social media and stuff like that, or media in general. I really don't see you guys going for things like religious barriers, political barriers, folk or local culture barriers. They're acceptable, they're there, and you can read them in the rubric, but I really don't see you guys talking about things beyond the generational gap that could exist between the diffusion of these new words or having access to social media. Ms. Green, is there anything you want to add with this FRQ? I'm moving really fast today. I'm really hungry. I'm gonna go eat. All right, so we're moving on to our last FRQ. I think I may have gotten a text message or a remind. Okay, no, I'm good. All right. Okay, moving on to our last FRQ, we're looking at Canada, the Great White North. All right, many countries around the world, including Canada, have more than one official language. So A, identify the primary language spoken by most inhabitants in the shaded area. Like I said, probably not going to see one like this on the AP exam. But B, C, and D are awesome questions. B, explain how bilingualism can have a positive impact on a country. Explain how it can have a negative impact on a country. And then discuss 2 reasons other than language why Canada is not fit to be a nation state. Look, that's a lot of knowledge you need to know that you can't look up. Like, you can look up what bilingualism is, but finding positive impacts, Googling, you're not going to find this in like 5 minutes, and then you still have to answer the other questions. So this is a great example. If you were able to write this FRQ, if you were just able to look at this and go, I know the answers to this, fantastic. You're in a great spot. If you looked at this and you went, okay, I know what they're talking about and I can figure out something, but I have to look stuff up, that's okay. That's great. If you're looking at this and you had to spend 30 minutes on this FRQ looking everything up, that's not a good place to be. That's a bad spot to be. So think about that as you're writing these FRQs. Like, not only do you understand the content, but are you able to get that content written down in a coherent way in a good amount of time to prepare for the AP exam? So anyway, French is the answer to A. Real tough one there. All right, how can bilingualism have a positive impact? Now, we have talked about Canada and the strange that comes along with Canada, especially when it comes to the Québécois and their French-speaking part of Canada. It's great because it does generate cultural diversity and multiculturalism. It's all good. It does generate cultural diversity and multiculturalism. Guys, we've proven scientifically many times having multiple languages around you, having people from different backgrounds is fantastic. It creates a political identity for that region that they can have more power and more sense of place, right? Especially when you're talking about a minority group, they have that special cultural landscape to them and they can value where they live. It can create a syncretic culture, syncretism, where people use multiple languages. You could see languages blend maybe. Education, the fact is people speaking multiple languages, they're smarter. Politically wise, you have more people speaking more languages, which could create additional allies throughout the world. And then, of course, there's the economic advantage, the fact that people can speak multiple languages, have better jobs, the country can reach out to more countries, so on and so forth. So pretty standard positives to bilingualism, a lot of things that we've talked about, but no one ever considers the cons to bilingualism, especially when you make 2 official languages, right? You create social tension, right, or cultural tension. For all the English speakers, Because one of the things that the government requires in Canada, that if you want to hold public office, you have to be able to speak English and French. And while that's a positive, because they're trying to create that diversity, that multiculturalism, to keep the French-speaking people recognized as people of Canada, the downside is that it creates that tension, because what if you have an English speaker that wants to run for government who doesn't speak French, who has never needed to speak French in their life, but now they have to learn this language that they don't feel is a part of their country or part of them, just so they can go govern, right? So you can see this tension between the two different language speakers. And we can also see maybe like an ethnocentrism when it comes to the two different groups. This can be a centrifugal force, because people are forced to learn other languages that maybe they don't want to learn, which could then further create challenges to unity, especially when the country is maybe going through a crisis such as COVID-19 and trying to keep everybody together. What else do we got here? We have education. It says higher public or private costs incurred to educate language groups separately or to include both languages in a single education system. So now, the Canada education system has to make sure that every kid can speak, French and English, and that's really tough. And obviously there's an economic disadvantage because now it costs more money. Guys, they have to print everything in English and French, everything. Because when you make a language a official language, that means all of your legal documents have to be in every single official language because you have dictated it that way. So it costs a lot of money. All right, and then finally, discuss 2 reasons other than language why Canada does not fit the nation-state concept. Now, nation-state is a concept we talk about in Unit 4, and I know this is Unit 3, but hey, it's review, so you should be able to answer it. A nation-state says that overwhelmingly, the majority of people in your country share the same ethnicity and nationality. And we know this is not true in Canada because of the province of Quebec, that you have this group that has tons of autonomy, that can create laws in their own region, that they have their own language, that they're identified by that language. So there's multiple reasons why Canada is not a nation state. Let's start off with the fact that there's multiple nations. Besides the Quebecois people, there's also all the Indigenous people in Canada. You have multiple ethnicities throughout all of Canada. There's a huge cultural diversity, whether it's spread between religion, between Catholics, Protestants, Muslim, Jews, Buddhists, Orthodox, Hindus, Sikhs, or cultural traditions, or the fact that you have multiple languages. You have ethno-regionalism, where you literally have different regions of Canada with different ethnicities. So there's no way that they could be a nation state. And then, the rest of the stuff is a little more detailed. It goes into more specifics. I think the biggest one would be just looking at the population, just breaking down that they don't share a single ethnicity. They might share that single nationality of being Canadian, but even that is challenged when people like the Quebecois, they consider themselves more Quebec than Canadian. So it gets really tricky. But we are going to talk more about the craziness of multicultural and multi-ethnic states or multinational states in the next unit. So I'm checking right now for any questions. Okay, so this student asked, are we still going to be giving a mock exam? Also, it would be helpful to have a lesson specifically on prompt verbiage, differences between define, identify, and explain. Guys, we've been practicing that all year. They're not changing the verbs on you all of a sudden. They're just dropping the easy ones like define and identify. We will have, that's the point of these FRQ exercises, is to prepare you for that verbiage. We will go more in depth. I'm going probably to do a crash course FRQ tutoring live video, whatever you want to call it. Will we do a mock exam? That one, I'm a big fan of mock exams, and they are releasing like last year's exam, but I don't know how beneficial it will be for you guys to take an entire multiple choice mock exam for an FRQ. I don't see that, and test security purposes, I don't see how I could get that mock exam to you and do it safely.
But will we have somewhat of a mock exam focused on FRQs? Yeah, probably. Miss Green and I will probably come up with some type of FRQ that will be, or 2 FRQs that will be across multiple units to kind of test you on, what the FRQ could look like. But I mean, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So we're doing the best we can. Make sure you know content. Any other questions from anybody? I have my Remind open. Miss Green, you got any other questions? Okay. While I'm waiting for people to type, Monday, you do have a day off, so you don't have to work that day. Tuesday, we will hold another Zoom Q&A. We did it last Monday. It wasn't that great because no one showed up, and the people that didn't have any questions. So what I'm going to ask is if you decide to come to our Zoom meeting on Tuesday, because there's no school on Monday, have questions ready. If you do not have any questions ready, we will not be there. The questions can be about this past unit. It can be about anything at this point, obviously. It's just another opportunity for you guys to join, to ask us questions, and we can be there for you. The Zoom details will be up on Tuesday. If there's nothing else past that, I am going to end. Oh, no, I got a question. Okay, this is a good question. When will we be able to practice taking the exam? Not the actual content practice, but what platform we will use to practice taking the AP exam. Still haven't got anything from the AP exam yet. When we'll be practicing, uploading documents and stuff like that. But once again, you have the choice of how you want to write those FRQs. You can choose to handwrite them on a piece of paper, take a picture with your phone, and then upload that picture, which is probably going to be very difficult to read as a reader. You're allowed to type it on a document and then save that file and upload that file, which is probably what I would recommend because that'll be the easiest to read for the AP readers. We still have to think about them because when you take a picture of your written stuff, especially if you like to write in pencil and you're using those warmer lights and the not LED super bright white lights, but those more yellowish hues over paper with pencil, it's really hard to read. I'm going to be real with you. And I know that seems really, really specific, but it's really tough to read on a computer screen, especially because you'll have the piece of paper here and you're taking the picture like this. So it's at that weird angle instead of flat on so we can see everything. So something to think about when we get more, and I'm constantly checking the AP updates. When we know that there are ways to simulate uploading to the AP exam, we'll be sure to get that information to you and we will practice it and you will know what's best for you. Okay. I think that makes sense what I said. Don't you think, Ms. Green?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. 37 minutes. Fantastic. And we're done. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy your 3 days off. Try and rest as much as you can. If you have any questions, as always, please reach out to me. Please reach out to Ms. Green. We will do absolutely anything for you right now. We're really proud of you. You guys are absolutely crushing it. You're doing everything you need to do. You're staying on top of it. To the kids that are doing well and handling this and loving the isolation, so proud of you. To the kids who are struggling and drowning and trying to come up with a schedule, as in not going to bed at 3 a.m. and waking up at 12 at noon, you're doing great too. Every single one of you is trying your best and we value you so much. Cool. All right. See you later, everybody.